We'll make it work. All right, everyone. Welcome to Looper Talk, episode 8. My name is Tim Palmer. Today, the episode is called The Shot You Should Have Hit. What I mean by that is, as a caddy, what are some common mistakes that I see my golfers make on the golf course? What I wish they would have done differently. Very basic, to the point episode. So, how I can help these golfers play better. I have four situations that I see a lot from caddying where I think it's a very common mistake that players make. And this would be very helpful to get them just playing better golf. And it's not really swing stuff. It's much more. I want to stay away from the strategic stuff because that's another episode. But this is much more on kind of basic fundamentals that would help them maybe navigate through some tough holes or some tough situations. So, first scenario, we'll talk about the tee box and where you line up on the tee. And so I'll kind of make a metaphor here. Par 4 dogleg left, and there's a big pond on the left on the tee shot. Most golfers, what they're doing is they're trying to play it right of the water, and they're not concerned about where they tee off on the tee box. Sometimes they'll accidentally do it correct. Sometimes they won't. But one tip I'll recommend is wherever the hazard or the woods or wherever you don't want to go is, that's the side of the tee box you line up on, because then that will allow you to have the freedom to aim further away from it. So think of it this way. If I'm standing here and I'm lining towards the camera, right, this way, and I had to go to the left side, right, that's where I'm trying to end up. The more I go to the right side of this camera, you can see how everything opens up visually that way. So that's a very common tip. I don't see a lot of golfers doing that, though. I think they tend to avoid it. So with that situation, they'll get to the right side of the tee box, and then they'll try to aim right. And what they're doing is they're constricting their view and their availability to aim down that right side. So, yeah, the next time you're up at a hole and you always tend to end up on the side you don't want to be on, try to, on the tee shot, aim yourself on that side of the tee box and see what happens. See if your views change, see how your mentality changes on the tee, because when you lined up in a certain way on the tee box, that can open your mind up to where it can create a change of the feeling of the hole, because we get into a routine playing our home course and we don't notice these minor nuances that we've created as a trend, I guess. So to combat that, the next time you end up on a hole like that, try to aim up on the side of the tee box you don't want to end up on. It always helps me. And another thing I want to talk to amateurs about is a common fault that I see is a trust issue, where they go to a golf hole, maybe they've never seen it, or a golf hole they've seen a lot, and they're playing good. They're in what I call a flow state, and then they get to a hole and it's almost like they take themselves out of their gut feelings and they start to try what I call try too hard. Or what I mean is you don't allow your natural mind to take you where you need to go. And so I'll give you an example. Say we get up to a huge par 5 and it's a wide fairway and there's a lot of room, and I haven't hit a lot of drivers, but for some reason I feel comfortable enough to hit driver. And instead of going with that gut feeling of like, yeah, let's try driver, why not? I add too much logic to it, and I think, well, that's not how the day's going. let's hit this club instead. I don't care regardless, blah, 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 which can then return in I have a third shot into a par 5 because I took the shorter club. Now I don't have a scoring club, where if I would have went with my gut instincts with my driver, who knows, I would have had a better chance of having a better hole. So I see a lot of amateurs stray away from their gut feelings. They put too much thought into stuff, and I think we could, on the tee box, be much more about the situation at hand instead of thinking so far ahead. Let the moment present itself, and whatever you feel in that moment, you should trust what you feel, what your initial thoughts were, and then go to the next moment. If we tend to have too much foresight and we think ahead too much, that's when I think we get lost in the logic of the situation, which is good sometimes, but I think golf is very much heavy on situational awareness. So yeah, tee box, we line up on the side of the tee that we don't want to end up on. And then secondly, we trust our gut with the club we want to choose. So in essence, don't be afraid to hit driver, right? So let's talk about par 5s. And to me, this is where I am appalled in a way, because depending on the amateur, there's two ways I've noticed par 5s being trending. And one of the trends I don't mind, the other trend I tend to not agree with. Depends. If they're a longer hitter, par 5s tend to not be so intimidating. And so what I've noticed with the longer hitters on par 5s is they lick their chops early. And that's the one situation where if we end up on that, that could hurt us. The other the other player, or the other type of thought about a par 5 is they're intimidated because of the length. They have to hit 3 big shots. So let's talk about par 5s as a player, and how I would handle those differently. So on the tee box, that situational awareness of allowing the moment to develop at the moment when it comes to you, I believe comes hand in hand with a par 5, because we have to understand that there is scoring opportunities, and then sometimes there's not. So with both situations, the longer hitter or the shorter hitter, we should be very cautious about what we're walking up against. So even if it looks short on the scorecard, there might be wind. Even though it looks long on the scorecard, it might be downhill. So we have to be open-minded with par 5s. I think for the longer hitters, we should be okay with laying up. I think that they tend to fall into the category of, I want to go for it, which I agree with. Aggressive is great. I don't mind aggression, but we have to have controlled aggression. And so if our gut's telling us, no, this isn't going to work, even though you've pulled the shot off before, that gut instinct we have to really pay attention to. So for the longer hitters, don't feel like you always have to go for it. And for the shorter hitters, when we get up to a par 5, don't feel like we have to kill it off the tee box. If it's a long par 5, or we feel like we have to hit 3 big shots, let's focus on contact. And let's let the contact provide the distance, because more likely than not, that second shot, if you hit 2 shots 200 plus, you're going to have a scoring club in if you're playing from the right tee box. So for the shorter hitter, they tend to fall into thinking they have to swing hard to make the hole be appropriate. However, if they just hit 2 solid 200-yard shots, they're going to have inside of 150 in. So we have to observe that and understand that par fives aren't necessarily this big beast of a hole that requires so much distance. So both players need to see the effectiveness of splitting it into 3 shots and how that works. So par fives can still be a tough hole. So we have to give them with some respect, long or short. So okay, so to go up from there, I want to talk about short game. And to me, what I believe better, or not better players, every player needs to do is, if you've played a golf course before, you need to know where to miss on the green. So that way your short game is not so difficult. Figure out, doesn't matter where the pin is, figure out which side of the green is the easiest side to get the ball on the green. And then once you figure that out, then on short game, to me, we don't have to always get it inside of 8 feet, 6 feet. We need to realize that sometimes just having a putt for par is what is manageable, even for the better players. If I'm stuck in a bunker, shitty situation, if I have a tight pin where if I get aggressive, it can cost me. Sometimes we need to understand that the goal is to have a putt for par. And I think a lot of players would do really well with that mindset that, okay, my goal, get it on the green, have that putt, give myself a chance. If I walk out of here with a bogey, bogeys are fine. No, they're not what we need, but they're not this killer that's going to slice our round in half. So sometimes we have to bite the bullet, take what the good Lord has given us, see what we can do, and if we can get it, I mean, sometimes a 20-footer for par, we can still make that putt. Yeah, it's not ideal, doesn't look great, but golf's not meant to look good. Golf is just meant to be played like anything else. So understand the situation and see what we can do with it. Now, if you have a sack of potatoes chip straight in front of you, why not? Be aggressive. Nothing wrong with that. But I think sometimes when it comes to short game, every player, every skill level, we have to understand what the expectation of the shot is. So, sorry, my stepdaughter is here. Hello. Hello. All right. So to finish, let's talk about short putts. This is awesome because now the better players, I think short putts are fine because they understand the struggle behind them. So I'm not going to blow y'all's minds. This is mostly for the higher handicappers because that's where I see the most struggle is. The lower handicappers, they get into a groove, they'll start making them, and then they're fine. Sometimes they get off kilter, and it's mostly the ones that haven't played that much. So, but your higher handicapper amateurs, this is mostly for them because and even to tie this in, for your high handicappers, when you're outside of 15 feet, lag it up there. That's the one outside of short putts. Let's just tie that in. I think the better players, you all know this, but for your high handicappers, the percentages are so low to make those putts. I'll find a chart posted on this video, but it is such a low percentage to make those shots that there's no reason to have the expectation to put that shot in the hole. 15, 20, 30, 40 feet. We're just trying to get it into a zone to where I know I can make that next one because a 2-putt's great, right? Now, this is something I want all my higher amateurs to try because I'm very big on putting being a subjective thing where it's an art. It's not necessarily something you can be taught. It's something that needs to happen naturally because you have done it so many times. And that's the beauty of putting, because when you say it like that, that allows the human element to prosper because there's no exact way of doing it. All it matters is if that face is square to the ball at impact going towards the line with correct speed. That correct speed is huge. That is 80% of putting is speed. I'm telling you right now, good putts have great speed. That's what it comes down to. Line, yes, we want it online for sure, but even on the short putts, focus on speed when you're starting out. Speed is crucial. So anyways, for you higher handicappers, if you have a putt that's 5 foot in, try this. Instead of being so focused on the line, focus on how the ball is going to enter the hole and focus on the speed it's going to enter the hole. It takes a lot of pressure off of the structure of your stroke. So here's your hole, right? And if it's a right to left putt and it's going to enter on the right side of the hole, we'll focus on that speed, how fast or slow you want it entering the hole. I always think of it as like 1, 2, or 3. 1 dying speed, 3 being firm, 2 somewhere in the middle. And then what that'll do is once you figure out your speed and you figure out what side of the hole the ball is going to enter on, if it's a dying putt that's breaking a lot, it'll be on a side door. If it's not breaking that much at all, it'll stay somewhat more the center of the cup. So when you start thinking along those lines on short putts, that'll help you take a lot of pressure off having to stroke it exactly a certain way. That will allow you an element of error. And with that allowance, it gives your brain the freedom to stroke it naturally. 2, it gives the putt a better chance to go in because you have an allowance of error, right? So now on straight putts, they become a little more difficult because the amount of hole available becomes more on the front end, right? That's why I think straight putts are a lot difficult, or more difficult than your ones that break a little bit. I think for your high handicappers, try this. Just focus on where it's going to enter the hole, get the speed right, take all the rest of it out, let the stroke be natural, get the face as square as you can, and it'll help a ton. It makes putting very simple, and that way it will allow the finesse, the artistic element to be present. Yeah, that's it for Looper Talk. The shot you should have hit. Let's see what the next episode is. I have them all written down. I'm going to do a bunch of golf episodes. What golfers get wrong about strategy. So we're going to talk about how we can strategize better around golf courses, especially for your short hitters. So thanks for tuning in to Looper Talk. My name is Tim Palmer. And remember, lighten the bags, 200 is trap. Thank you, fellas and ladies. Have a good night.